It goes back to, the summer of, the riots, not getting prosecuted, the government getting these rioters and insurrectionists out of jail, to January 6th, where these people mostly peacefully protested at the Capitol, and I actually got a headshot. Michael Burt was the insane charge. And we have political prisoners in jail to this day. It really on trumped up charges, let's say.
Yeah.
And,
So I'm gonna take a very unpopular position here, and I'm gonna disagree with you, and I'll tell you why. When you assault a police officer, you are a criminal.
Correct.
When you break a window to get into a place you are not authorized to be in, you are a criminal. We can't have separate standards for the people who were rioting and breaking things that I thought should go to jail, and have a separate standard for somebody that broke into the Capitol and assaulted. They used mace on a police officer. They hit him with those people are criminals and needed to be pursued. I have we shouldn't even think about that. And here's the thing we should think about. Biden's commercial. Have you seen his commercial yet? I actually think it's pretty good. I don't like it, but it's pretty good. I thought it was a good commercial because he invokes emotion.
All right, okay. I don't know what's going on with the echo here. Oh, yes, I do. I was getting feedback in my headphones because of the Rumble feed that went live, and I was hearing double. I thought, oh my God, you guys probably were hearing the same thing. So that's why I terminated the clip, but you got the idea. Rogers goes on for a while there. In fact, I don't think we got to that point in the clip just yet, but he repeats the lie that January 6th protesters used pepper spray and beat a police officer with a fire extinguisher. I think he actually trails off before he says fire extinguisher, but those were two of the biggest lies about January 6th. Was that first, their story was that January 6th protesters killed a cop by hitting him in the head with a fire extinguisher. Then the evidence proved that was false. Then they claimed that they pepper sprayed them with some kind of mace cannon, which was also turned out to be completely false. But I think more importantly to the point in that clip there is Mike Rogers' demeanor. Now, this is a guy who's lived in Florida for the last several years. He never really had any connections to Michigan. He was an old FBI guy, much like Alyssa Slotkin, who carpetbagged over from Washington to run for Congress in that same district. The old 8th district that Rogers served was that same area that Slotkin serves, Lansing, Livingston County, Oakland County area. Same exact story. And tonight we're gonna talk about this Trump endorsement. There's been a lot of you guys know how I feel about this. If you got my email today, we've got hundreds. Thank you to everyone that signed the letter that we will be delivering to Trump, saying that this is a terrible mistake. You need to reconsider, rescind the endorsement, and fire whoever staffer told you this was a good idea. But we're gonna get into all this stuff tonight. Just me tonight, folks. No guests. Some of that's because of availability. Some people, friends of the show, you might know, are supporting candidates, and some candidates even wanted me to have them on the show tonight. But I want to keep this objective. Talked about some different perspectives, and I think that the place to start first off is with Mike Rogers himself and trying to figure out what. Well, I don't think it's very confusing what Trump's angle on this was. Although the big question to me is, why didn't he just wait? Why did he decide to endorse right now, 5 months before the primary? And I think the answer is pretty straightforward. He looked at this race and said, there's not one but two candidates in this race that voted to impeach me. One was Justin Amash in the first impeachment, and the second was Peter Meyer in the second impeachment. And he's like, I got to make sure those guys don't get elected. Unfortunately, I don't think there was enough due diligence done about Mike Rogers, because as we shall see, Rogers himself is, and always has been, never Trumper. In fact, I think the first thing I want to go to is this Roger Stone article. I quoted from this a little bit in today's email. Let me bring this up here. This is from Roger Stone's website, rogerstone.substack.com. This is his February 21st article. Michigan U.S. Senate candidate Mike Rogers is the most dangerous anti-Trump phony running for office. Voters need to be leery of this blatant fraud and reject Rogers in the primary election. Couldn't agree more. of the things that little bookmark bar just to get a little more space here. There we go. Tim Kuhn says either a crazy terrible blunder or they made a deal. I think there's something else to it also, though. The Senate field in Michigan is very crowded. There was a lot of, let me pull up my own Twitter feed actually. I copied and I reposted a bunch of people's different takes on this. A lot of what people were saying was, what's just taking a long time to load? That this is a race between, I saw like libertarians posting, this is between Mike Rogers and Justin Amash. No, there's like a dozen other candidates in this race, folks. But Amash is a former congressman. Peter Meyer was the former congressman who replaced Justin Amash. Mike Rogers is a former congressman. None of the others have ever served in Congress. So it's easy for someone like Trump to say, I don't know who any of these other people are. Now, the one big distinction might be, oh, look, it finally came up. There's our Twitter feed, is that some of these candidates do have serious money to put in. We don't know exactly how much. We might be able to estimate. But we did look, it was some weeks ago, we looked at the FEC disclosures after the new year. And we had, I think Sandy Pencil put $1 million of his own money into the race. And that was before the new year. So clearly a self-funder. I have heard from others, Michael Hoover is a self-funder. I've heard that Glenn Wilson is a self-funder. Now, I don't know exactly what that means in terms of how much money they can raise. But to the others, here's a question. How many millions of your own dollars are you willing to put into your campaign? And if the answer is, I don't have $1 million, get out now, guys. You are wasting your time and you're wasting your donors' time. Sorry, like Nikki Snyder, she's from Washtenaw County. I've known Nikki for years. She posted, I think she raised $250,000 before the new year. That's not enough. Trump has now endorsed Mike Rogers. And maybe, just maybe, there's a chance we'll be able to talk him into rescinding the endorsement. I doubt it, frankly, because it's hard to get that genie back into the bottle. It's hard to, once it's gone out there, you kind of look bad when you revoke an endorsement. But I mean, and therefore, however much you thought it was going to take to win the primary, now it's going to take double. Because now Mike Rogers is the swamp endorsed candidate and Trump endorsed candidate. So if you think you're beating him with nothing, well, I got news for you. Anyway, oh shoot, you know what, folks? Hold on. I'm sorry. I just realized something. I decided I would try to make it easier for myself to be able to access, to keep the things I want to show on the screen on stream separate from the things that I'm looking at all day long on my web browser. So I tried to use a different web browser. And the problem is I am actually not logged in on Twitter, which apparently for Twitter, that means if you're not logged in, they show you tweets from people from years ago. So like, this is what's actually on my Twitter page, apparently, twitter.com/rescue_Michigan. But because I'm not logged in, the last thing it shows you is from June 7th, 2023. I'm like, whose page is this? This makes no sense at all. Patty P says, Nikki for Congress in the 6th, Meyer or Mosh for Congress, where they're from. Well, personally, I will never support any candidate for Congress who voted to overthrow the president. I wouldn't vote for Meyer or Amash for dog catcher. Nikki Snyder, maybe, if she can make that transition. I'm not sure. Anyway, all right, let me get out of this and go over to my current Twitter feed. Hey, folks, I'm new at this. I'm still learning the ropes of how to run a stream here, and sometimes there are technical issues. Although we have actually got, well, I was going to say, I've got a permanent stream key for Rumble, which I think means we'll have less errors going live on Rumble in the future. But anyway. Oh, hey, there's me. Let me scroll down a bit. We got some various, I've posted some more recent stories. Oh, by the way, just since I happen to scroll past this is today. Another thing that happened today in Trump land, Trump suddenly came out talking about entitlements, which is, I think the actual correct position, because Social Security and Medicare are completely insolvent, they're a financial time bomb, they're going to destroy the country. But politically, that's a bad thing to do. So Trump broached that subject yesterday, and the only way to be even worse about entitlements by just bringing it up is to be Ben Shapiro talking about entitlements. So here's Ben Shapiro saying, "None of the United States should be retiring at 65 years old. Frankly, I think retirement itself is a stupid idea unless you have some sort of health problem." And to which Michael Tracy's like, "Imagine saying this to a manual labor when your job is to sit around chatting about politics." Yeah. Yeah. When your job is, sucking the tits of billionaire Republican donors, it's easy to say you can retire early. But for real people, that's probably a different thing. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yes, we're talking about Trump's endorsements. So, yeah, so here's like a take from Glenn Greenwald. GOP Michigan Senate candidate Mike Rogers has long been one of the most steadfast servants in the U.S. security state, along with Dianne Feinstein at his side here. I forgot about this, but it's consistent with his character. He's running against civil libertarian Justin Amash. Oh, is that all? Is that his only opponent in the race, is Justin Amash? Because that mentality kind of explains Trump's endorsement, don't you think? Oh, it's between Trump and Amash and Meyer. Well, then I guess I've gotten a good choice. But of course, that's not the case. At least Sandy Pence will be financially competitive. I don't know about Glenn Wilson. He has told me he's super rich, is going to throw tons of money to the race. I'll believe when I see it. Michael Hoover, I think he posted that he put in like something like $250,000, $500,000, something like that into his campaign. It's going to take more. And I'll tell you what, folks, these non-Trump hating alternative candidates need to have some impartial party measure their bank accounts and see who's got the most to spend, because guess what? It's going to happen if they don't sort this out by themselves. They're going to all spend all of their money just to lose to the swamp candidate. That's what's going to happen. It's that simple. That's the perspective that a lot of people have. Is this is between Mike Rogers and Justin Amash, or you don't hear much about Peter Meyer these days, honestly, but Justin Amash too, because I get a lot from Justin Amash because of the libertarians that I know, hit me up because of the Ron Paul connection. So I see posts from them. By the way, Matt Kibbe, if you don't know who Matt Kibbe is, he was for years, ran a group called Freedom Works, wrote a book. What's it called again? Don't Hurt People and Don't Take Their Stuff. Says, can't get more deep state than Mike Rogers. This is real Donald Trump's Achilles heel. He values sycophancy over principles. Even when the sycophants he empowers actively work against his stated interests. C. John Bolton. Yep. We have, what was I looking at this one for? The last refuge made a point that, oh yeah, by the way, if you didn't know this, Mike Rogers was involved in protecting Hillary Clinton. So there's that story, which actually was covered much more extensively by Roger Stone. I am going to go to that in a minute, but here's another example. This is Libertarian Mama, who is from Arizona, not Michigan, with this quote from talking about Pfizer here. Let me switch this off into the tab mode so that I can actually play the audio of the clip for you guys. Hold on. Let's see. Here we go.
There are strong.
Ladies yield. Time has expired. Gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself as much time as I might consume. It's just important to remember that the due process protections of the United States are alive and well here. This is one of those programs that has an inordinate amount of oversight to make sure that we are not targeting Americans. Not only does the committee participate, but the Department of Justice has a separate review. There are strong internal reviews. And in the odd case where an American is intercepted, there have very strict procedures on how to destroy that information and correct that problem. And it has not happened hardly frequently at all, is the good news, and which is why I think there is such bipartisan and strong support of our effort, again, to collect on foreigners who are outside of the United States. Incredibly important. So I would continue to reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlemen, ladies yield. Time has expired.
That was all complete BS. The program he was talking about is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, specifically Section 702, which he, as Intelligence Committee chair, was involved in crafting and which to this day has been used to spy on the Trump campaign, the Trump transition team, the Trump administration. This whole thing was the story in the documentary, The Plot Against the President, how that power was abused. In fact, that power has been abused hundreds of thousands of times. Hold on, let me pull up this article here. Weird how my browser history doesn't remember the things I've looked at just earlier today. Just FISA abuses. I'm just going to Google it. Oh, here's the story. Here we go. Widespread FBI abuse of foreign spy law sets off alarm bells, tech group says. Section 702. Debate rages after another FISA court opinion is unclassified. And again, folks, this was a story from last May. This is an issue that's alive right now. They had a proposal to reform FISA that the House Judiciary Committee was working on all this past year. Guess who killed it? The House Intelligence Committee, the same committee Mike Rogers headed. And when they say, "Oh, this is a valuable tool in fighting terrorism," so what actually happened? House Speaker Mike Johnson, through an extension of this warrantless mass surveillance program used to attack the Trump administration and the Trump campaign and Americans, into the National Defense Authorization Act. And they broke the rules to do it because guess what? Defense and intelligence are two different things. And it was totally off topic. There was a motion to suspend the rules. 2/3 of the House, including, by the way, the entire Michigan delegation, supported doing that. Although I think Rashida Tlaib voted no. Let me make this a little bit bigger so it's more legible. And here we go. Used to conduct warrantless searches on U.S. persons more than 280,000 times in 2020 and 2021. Backdoor searches on Americans were disclosures that the FBI ran more than 23,000 inquiries on people involved in January 6th. Political campaign donors, 19,000 of them. George Floyd protesters, a few of them, relatively speaking. And this article goes on about all this stuff. This is the long shadow Mike Rogers has cast over Congress. And he has, up until, let me find some more of these clips here. Up until the moment he decided he was not going to run for president against Trump, but was going to run for Senate and seek Trump's endorsement, he was badmouthing Trump constantly. He was a paid contributor for CNN. Let me find the clip here. Hold on. This clip, actually, here we go. Let me bring this up here. I believe this is actually a chopped off piece of a Sandy Penciller campaign ad. Here we go. Let's play.
Media. It's petty. And I don't believe today, as I'm sitting here, that Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee in 2024. Don't believe it. I don't think it's helpful for the President of the United States to attack the media. It's petty, and it's certainly below the statute. It's petty, and it's certainly helpful for the President of the United States.
Look at that subheading down there. Mike Rogers, CNN national security commentator on what's HLN, Headline News, a CNN affiliate. Oh, so Mike Rogers was a paid shill for CNN. And what's he doing with his platform on CNN? Trashing Donald Trump. Imagine that.
The States to attack the media. It's petty, and it's certainly below the stature of the office of the President of the United States. It's beneath the office in and of itself. Actions and activities unbecoming of the office of the President of the United States.
And I made this point in the email, but I'll make it again. When you say conduct unbecoming, that means something to military people. That's dishonorable misconduct. That's that's felonious misconduct. Now, of course, the commander-in-chief is a civilian technically, but he's in charge of the military. So when Mike Rogers throws around the term dishonorable, he says conduct unbecoming, i.e. dishonorable, he's implying that Trump is a criminal. That's what that means. And that's what Mike Rogers was saying. So, I want to do a little bit more about Mike Rogers because I want to make this point because we're going to get to some arguments people have here, which is basically that, what else? What's the alternatives? And a lot of people have been saying that. What's the alternatives? Well, we'll examine that in a moment. But first, we got to really get into why Mike Rogers is intolerable as a choice for U.S. Senate, as a nominee for U.S. Senate. Real quick though, Allegan News says, did you see Michigan State Rep Matt Maddock is suing the legislature, alleges First Amendment violations, where Democrat speaker is silencing elected officials. His lawyer is Mark Randazza. I did not know that. That's very impressive. More so because Michonne Maddock is, I believe, a January 6th, or not an elected defendant, which, any legal defense takes a lot of money. So to be able to also file suit, pretty amazing. Gray Wolf 49 on Rumble says Penciler pulled a bunch of ad money yesterday. I don't know what you mean by that, Gray Wolf. Typically, when you say pull, means withdraw. If I was Penciler, I'd be doubling my ad money right now. I think that's probably the mistake that these campaigns made. They didn't think Trump was going to endorse this early. They were holding their fire because they wouldn't have thought they would want to be spending money big time right now. They probably should have. That might have been a miscalculation. If I was Sandy Penciler's consultant, I would have said, go big early. Put money in tons of grassroots conservative groups so that you get lots of grassroots energy out there. Get some early endorsers, get on the airwaves, because what Trump probably thought was, I got to stop Justin Amash and Peter Meyer, who voted to impeach me. And I've never heard of any of these other guys. And the NRSC is already pushing Mike Rogers. That was probably his calculation. Maybe too late to undo that, but that's kind of where things are. Anyway, Bill Hamilton says, is he the one whose wife in charge of security for Benghazi? Yeah. Okay, let's look at this. This is Roger Stone's article, which is amazing. Hold on, pull it up here. One sec. Here we go. This is from Roger Stone. I read the headline of this. So this was in my email today. As chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Rogers attempted to stonewall the investigation into Benghazi, claiming that the Obama CIA officials were telling the truth and did not need to be investigated. This drew the attention of Judicial Watch, and they discovered that Rogers, let me make this bigger, Rogers' wife, Christie, ran a major security contractor in the private sector where her husband's clout in the D.C. swamp helped her firm, Aegis Defense Services, win many lucrative government contracts. Aegis was one of the defense firms that profited from Obama's regime change war in Libya, which turned out to be as much of a disaster as any of his George W. Bush's failed wars. As quintessential Washington insiders, according to Judicial Watch, Christie Rogers served as the president and CEO of Aegis, while Mike Rogers chaired the House Intelligence Committee. A glaring conflict of interest, as Aegis tallied Pentagon contract worth hundreds of millions. Aegis won the renewal of a Pentagon contract for reconstruction efforts in Iraq that was worth up to $475 million over 2 years, while Christie Rogers was an Aegis lobbyist. They were also awarded a $497 million State Department contract to secure the U.S. Embassy in Kabul. Most notably, Aegis won a stake in the 5-year State Department contract worth up to $10 billion with the express purpose of keeping embassies safe back in 2010. Although Aegis has publicly denied culpability with the Benghazi disaster, their record of malfeasance in Libya is undeniable. Aegis has been operating in Libya since February 2011, Aegis Advisory Intelligence report stated to its corporate clients. The report also claimed that Aegis has extensive links in Libya, which can be leveraged quickly to ensure safe passage, as they were reportedly seeking $5 billion in contracts to operate in the country. Aegis severely understated the threat of Islamic terrorism in Benghazi to contractors who could have presumably stopped the brutal murder of the U.S. Ambassador Christopher Stevens and 3 other Americans. And Aegis analysts claimed that Islamic extremism was minimal and Islamic countries active in the region had the threat under control. Despite reports of pockets of jihadist elements, the presence of Islamic extremism has so far been low-key. A senior Aegis official reported after visiting Benghazi in summer of 2011, noting that U.S. allies Qatar and the UAE have established a strong presence on the ground, providing tactical assistance at all levels, weapons, and recognition. Christie Rogers, his wife, obtained top-secret facility security clearance for Aegis, created the company's board of directors, and positioned it for future growth and expansion, according to her former profile at Manet Law Firm. Christie left Aegis in disgrace after the Benghazi scandal, and her husband hightailed it out of Congress shortly after, preferring to collect corporate lobbyists' paychecks rather than deal with the fallout from their cronyism. Rogers has raked in millions following his departure from Congress, funding a lavish lifestyle and leaving his home state of Michigan in the dust. Rogers has raked in nearly $2 million from serving on the boards of various tech and cybersecurity firms in the past 2 years alone, cashing on his deep state bona fides and amassing assets of $17.5 million as a military industrial grifter. Rogers lived in a mansion worth $1.5 million in Cape Coral, Florida, before relocating and buying a home in the Detroit area only a few months before announcing his U.S. Senate run last year. Now there's a record of jeopardizing national security is in the rearview mirror, and his coffers are filled with corporate money from the infamous revolving door between big business and big government. Rogers is attempting a political comeback. In the state of Michigan, where the war between the Republican elite and conservative grassroots is perhaps the nastiest anywhere in the nation. Yeah, that's probably true. Rogers is hoping to slide under the radar to leverage his vast wealth and establishment connections to steal a U.S. Senate seat. Rogers is hoping that voters see him as a tough, no-nonsense, law and order conservative. He has been releasing messages crafted by a team of well-paid establishment consultants to whitewash his actual record. Last month, Rogers published a gushing endorsement of President Trump, hoping to win the eye of Trump and receive the prize endorsement that would put him ahead of a crowded pack of contenders and make him the major favorite in a muddled field. However, before he cynically reinvented himself as a pro-Trump Republican, Rogers, and we've been over this already, Rogers completely hated Trump. And this is the video we just watched. He supports the open-ended probe of election fraud protesters who were assaulted by the Capitol Police. And there's the quote that we already heard. There's the lies. We probably missed this in the cold open, but that is the lies that he told, that he repeated, major Democrat big lies on January 6th. And of course, then he says, we got to move on. We got to start telling people we have something better for them. If we're talking about January 6th, 2 months from now, we're going to lose. We got to move on, guys. Too bad for those, January 6th protesters who are still in prison to this day. Roger Stone concludes, Rogers may talk a good game now, but veteran deep state operatives such as himself revel in their ability to lie to the American public to subvert the will of the people. Take this frank admission from Mike Pompeo, deep state veteran conman turned traitor to Trump, as proof. And he quotes Mike Pompeo saying, I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. We had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment, Pompeo said during a 2019 address at Texas A&M. Rogers is the most dangerous rhino currently running for office in the nation. Voters need to be leery of this blatant fraud and reject Rogers in the primary election before he's on the ballot in November to undermine President Trump in the crucial battleground state of Michigan. And he will. Folks, let me ask you something. How'd you feel if Mike Rogers was the nominee? Because the way I'd feel is it would make me sick. I would not want to. I want to go to some other comment here because this, I think, kind of addresses. Well, I don't want to be perceived as straw manning somebody else. But this is somebody's honest opinion, and we can talk about it. I did invite Scott onto the show tonight. He said he couldn't make it because he's busy. I don't want to be unfair. This is what Scott McMahon wrote. We've had Scott on the show recently multiple times, and we'll just talk about his analysis here. He says, Trump endorses what's his face. I'm actually okay with that. And here's his reasoning. He says, 3 months ago, I considered myself, and again, look, I'm not going to agree with this because, and again, Scott's not here, so that you might say that's unfair. We can respectfully disagree. And at some point, I'll have Mike on the show. We can talk about it later on, too. He said, but this is what he lays out as his arguments. He says, 3 months ago, I considered myself ultra, mega, MAGA. Now I only consider myself redeemed by Christ and an anti-communist. I've been shocked at how little of what we hear from politicians and pundits can be accepted as true. I do believe that President Trump has access to more information than most of us. Well, I'm not sure I agree with that entirely, because Trump is also a busy guy. And, we've talked about how, we're in Michigan. We can become experts in Michigan politics and still be clueless about what's happening in 49 other states. So Trump might have access to more information than most of us. Does that mean he's a better expert in Michigan politics? Probably not. He says he knew Mike Rogers had disrespected him in the past and was a rhino, but he still chose him. Why? Well, I already gave you my theory. Scott says, who else should he have chosen? Could any of the other candidates have raised even 10% of what Rogers likely will? I'd say certainly Sandy Pensler can, possibly others. I'm not certain. Stacked up against Slotkin and her probable $100 million war chest, who would have a better chance than Rogers? Well, had Trump endorsed somebody else, probably. This ignores Rogers' negatives. There are Democrats and Republicans who are appalled by deep state spying, who are appalled by the military-industrial complex that has now actually destroyed our military readiness. These neocons have waged this stupid war in Ukraine that's cost us hundreds of billions of dollars, sapped our reserves, destroyed NATO's military reserves. Their artillery shells are gone. Their tanks are gone. Their missiles are gone. They have used everything up fighting Russia, failing at it. And now Russia's the biggest military power in Europe by far. Russia and China have vastly more military production capabilities than we do. And now they're like, oh, let's pivot to war with China. This is how insane these people are. And there are Democrats and Republicans who are going, no, that's crazy. Now, might be that Mike Rogers versus Alyssa Slotkin, guess what? We've got nobody. But if it was a Republican who was not in support of endless foreign wars, there would be a choice. There would be a choice. Maybe some of those moderate voters would have gone to the Republican then, but they wouldn't go to Mike Rogers, whose record as a neocon is extensive. So Scott says, the hard reality is Michigan is unlikely to elect a Republican senator. Well, we have disadvantages here, no question about it, but hope springs eternal. We saw what happened in 2022, and we had 3 pretty MAGA-speaking candidates on the ballot. Sure, there was fraud, but we didn't overcome it. I don't think it's fair to compare one year to the other. A lot of things went ridiculously wrong in 2022, starting with a lot of the major candidates getting thrown off the ballot. And a lot of things happening that were not to be expected. So, that's just the way it goes in politics. So he says, if we're going to have a GOP senator, we need one who can appeal to moderates and left of center Democrats who don't like the tyranny of the left, but don't want someone they see as a Christian nationalist. Can you imagine putting this statement in the Mirror and a Democrat saying, if we're going to have a Democrat senator, we need one who can appeal to the moderates and right of center Republicans who don't like the tyranny of the hardcore leftists, but don't want someone they see as a Marxist. I'm sorry, don't like the tyranny of the far right, but don't want someone they can see as a cultural Marxist. No, they never say that. Why don't they ever say it? Because they believe in campaigning on their issues. And they win campaigning on their issues. We lose abandoning our issues. We lose because when you're weak on everything, voters are like, I guess the Democrats aren't that bad. And now he says, especially given what I've learned about the GOP disruptors who have infiltrated much of the Christian right, that's like trading one tyranny for another. I disagree. I don't think that Sandy Penciller or Michael Hoover or maybe even Sherry O'Donnell or Glenn Wilson or Nikki Snyder are these hardcore, these weird Karamo supporting right-wing Marxists. No, they're not. I don't think they are that at all. I think they're all going to run as moderates. I mean, not moderates, but principled people, not hardcore disruptors, not people who are, they're not Steve Carra types. They're not Neil Frisky types. They're running to win. Scott says, if Slotkin wins, I get 0% representation. She would vote the way I want 0% of the time. If Rogers wins, maybe I get 50% representation. Do you? I doubt that. If Rogers wins, you get another Lindsey Graham in the Senate. Which means, unlike with Slotkin, if Slotkin wins, you can run someone else better, hopefully, next time in 6 years, and maybe the NRSC will learn their lesson about backing neocons and interfering in our primaries. But if Rogers wins, guess what happens? You got to support his neocon agenda, which is 99% the same as what Slotkin's is, by the way. Oh, you think Rogers is going to be a fiscal hawk? You think he's going to be against the surveillance state that he's been supporting for decades? No, the distinction is Now you've got nothing to push back against. Now, when you criticize Mike Rogers' record as a U.S. Senator, Republicans go, oh, you're helping the Democrats win talking about this stuff. I'm going to talk more about this in a moment. Let me finish this. He says, where it really counts in the Senate is with judicial appointments. This is always the fallback the lesser of two evil arguments goes to, is at least we get the judiciary. If Rogers wins, he's got to know that Trump's early endorsement was a key to him getting through the primary. He don't care. Do you think Trump's nomination of Amy Coney Barrett got her to vote the way Trump would want because she was so grateful to him for the nomination? I'm pretty sure Trump endorsed Peter Meyer for Congress. He doesn't hesitate to vote to impeach him. These people are backstabbers. He's a former chair of the Intelligence Committee, for crying out loud. You think he's going to be loyal to you? Has Trump learned nothing about, well, maybe I'm talking about Trump here, but I mean, seriously. Swamp creatures, backstabbing is their way of life. Anyway, Scott says, even though I can't trust him to vote against sending any more of our tax money to Ukraine, or what else? How about the budget reforms? Every few months, passing a continuing resolution. The Pelosi budgets are still the things that the Republicans are passing because they can't do anything else. Because they don't have the discipline to get anything else through. The foreign policy is the Democrats' foreign policy. So they, and look, I'm not trying to pick on Scott here. He is articulating what is one of the most common theories in politics, the lesser of two evils argument, which is that at least if we get a Republican in, I'll get something. I'll get some stuff. And the stuff in this case, he's arguing, at least you get you'll probably get good judicial appointments. Will you, though? Because I remember Mitch McConnell blackmailing Donald Trump and saying, I'm going to vote to impeach you if you pardon Julian Assange. What do you think McConnell was saying about Trump's judicial appointments? How come Trump didn't appoint Barbara Lagoa and instead he appointed Amy Coney Barrett? What was Conservative Inc. doing? They were saying, we're gonna oppose you if you vote for a civil libertarian, a serious person. So you might think on paper, oh yeah, the Trump nominee is going to be wonderful because of the Republican majority in the Senate. But will it? So he says, it's pretty likely he will support Trump's judge picks. Well, maybe, and he says, maybe that's the best we can expect. I'd rather have 50% than zero any day of the week and twice on Sunday. And again, folks, this is the lesser of two evils theory. There are, and I've said this before on the stream, I'll say it again. There's 4 problems with the lesser of two evils theory, at least 4 problems. First problem is the classical, most popular argument. You can say it with me. The lesser of two evils is still evil. And I don't want to support evil. In my opinion, this is the weakest argument. It does not refute anything that Scott McMahon just argued or anybody else who makes this argument. Okay, yeah. It's still the lesser of two evils is still evil. That's true. I'd still prefer to minimize evil. That's what he just said. Okay, but that's the most popular argument. It is also, in my opinion, the weakest. Here's the second argument, however. You don't get your agenda passed by supporting people that vote against it. I've spent the past several weeks, months or more, fighting this renewal of warrantless mass surveillance. It has come up multiple times. It came up in the NDAA fight in December. It's coming up right now. It's coming up in the next month. Right now, in the House, they are doing a budget scramble, and then the the renewal of FISA, Section 702, is coming up in the House in the next couple of months. Well, gee, what message does it send to Congress that, okay, you can be the architect of warrantless mass surveillance and MAGA Republicans will vote to send you back into power again? What's the message you send with that? Oh, well, then I can vote for it and no one's going to punish me for it. Because guess what? I own those voters. They're mine. Because what are they going to do? Vote Democrat? That's why there's never been any pro-life accomplishments for the conservative movement over the years, because They are a wholly owned subsidiary of the Republican Party. What are they going to do? Vote Democrat? So every time voters hold their nose and vote for rhinos, they're losing their agenda. All right, that's the second argument. Argument number 3. It demoralizes our people to be told what we must settle for. You got to elect the FBI to defeat the CIA. You got to elect Mike Rogers to defeat Alyssa Slotkin. Yeah. Good luck getting people to knock on doors for that. Yeah, we're going to go out and knock on doors, folks. We got to take back the U.S. Senate. Oh, really? Who are you supporting? Mike Rogers. Who's Mike Rogers? He's a never-Trumper who loves warrantless mass surveillance, who probably would vote to impeach Trump if given the opportunity. Oh, really? I'm not knocking on doors for that guy. That's the guy? That's the guy that Michigan Republicans elected? Well, then fuck the Michigan Republican Party. That's what volunteers will say if that's who our nominee is. But here's the big thing, and this is what I was getting to earlier. The big thing, the fourth thing, the most important argument is that it's not even true. The lesser of two evils is the greater of the two evils, oftentimes, because the agenda is exactly the same, because Mike Rogers and Alyssa Slotkin will vote the same way on almost every single issue of significance. The distinction is that now we can't run a Republican to defeat Mike Rogers. Now you got a Lindsey Graham in the Senate, and you're stuck with him for the rest of his entire career, or Mitch McConnell, or John Barrasso, or John Cornyn. Take your pick, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins. That's how these guys get. Once they get in, you're stuck with them. At least we have some hope if Slotkin gets in, we can come back and beat her in 6 years. Emma Birch says, why do you think Trump endorsed him? Sorry if you already mentioned it. I just joined. I did mention it. I'll mention it again, though, just for you, Emma. I think he looked at the field. He said, I got to beat Amash. I got to beat Meyer. I don't want Trump impeacher being the nominee. And I don't know who the other people are. That's the problem. I think had someone like Sandy Pensler dropped millions of dollars into name ID and getting the word out about him and, supporting various local conservative groups and stuff and getting them all to endorse him and things like that. Maybe he'd be on Trump's radar. Same with any other candidate, but that didn't happen. So here we are. Maybe somebody will be able to play catch up now. Possibly. But again, any candidate for U.S. Senate in Michigan who does not have millions of dollars to spend in their campaign now probably has no chance whatsoever, period. And if more than one of them do, they'll probably spend their millions of dollars beating each other up and ultimately pulling from the same constituency and ending up losing. Barry Altman says, am I going to endorse any Senate candidate? The Rescue Michigan organization, as a policy, never endorses candidates. We only do pain. We don't do pleasure. That is a policy because I have learned from bitter experience over the years that if you endorse somebody, bad things may happen in the future. As an example, in 2010, I very well might have endorsed Justin Amash. I might have endorsed him in 2012. In 2014, in 2016, I might have called Justin Amash a champion of liberty. And then Justin Amash votes to overthrow the sitting president of the United States on false pretenses. Well, now who looks like a fool? So that's why I don't like to endorse candidates. I personally may endorse. Occasionally I have endorsed personally, despite my better judgment. So personally, I may. But Rescue Michigan as a policy, no, we never. We will do a candidate survey program. We will faithfully report the results of the survey that people complete. We will do that after the filing deadline has passed. And we will do that, and people can make their own judgments on that. But as a policy, no, I have had to send some cease and desist letters to some candidates who thought my kind words for them were endorsements, and they were not. Rescue Michigan does not endorse, never will endorse. I rarely do. I just call things as I see them, folks. So with that, let's see if there's anything more to cover tonight. I think I've covered the big stuff. Oh, someone was kind enough to send me this. Some more Mike Rogers stuff. This is some comments from Mike Rogers on Twitter at the time it was called. November 15th, 2022, when he wanted to run for president. Mike Rogers says, like many Americans, I appreciate many of Donald Trump's policy accomplishments, but it's time to move forward. America needs new conservative leadership that is principled, hope-filled, and focused on unifying us to overcome today's challengers. It's time to move forward. Really? It's a weird thing for a washed up congressman to say, Mike, because you were a former congressman. You're not exactly new. You're kind of a known quantity. Deep state infiltrator. January 6th, 2021. I wonder what happened on that day. The POTUS, real Donald Trump, must call for this riot to end and these crowds to disperse now. He did. He was banned from Twitter at that very moment, you putz. Mike Rogers, June 28th, 2020. In a video praised and promoted by Donald Trump, will only serve to incite and divide America further at a time when we must work together to address the very real problems of our country. This behavior is unacceptable. And Mike Rogers, October 17th, 2019. This is him just arguing for war in Syria. This is the consequence of rash and impulsive policymaking that doesn't think through the implications of a decision. We're bombing our own ammo dumps in northern Syria because we don't have enough trucks to support real Donald Trump's sudden withdrawal. And another freaking lie. Another lie, Mike Rogers. We know the facts have now come out. The military disobeyed Trump's orders to withdraw from Syria. Hey, are we still in Syria today? Oh, yeah, we are. Are we there illegally? Yes, we are. Did the Syrian government invite us to be there? No, they didn't. Or is there still a war going on between the Syrian government and ISIS? No, there isn't. Syria has said, get out of here. Like, no, we're not going to get out of Syria. We're stealing your oil. Don Cruz says politics does strange things to people. Yeah. K Duffney 222 on Rumble says, would Amash ever apologize to Trump for what he did? I would be shocked. I would be shocked if he did. We talked a lot about Justin Amash with on my program with Shane this past week. Justin Amash is an egomaniac, completely self-righteous, thinks everyone else in the world's dumber than he is, and thinks his voting to impeach Donald Trump was his hitting on conservative principles. He's a fart sniffer. He's not going to apologize to Trump. No. Hurlbags on Rumble says, never mind the U.S. steel sale to Japan, Nippon Steel. I don't know anything about that. Jason Mickelborg says, now you're doing drag shows in the Mediterranean. Yeah. Hey, for the military industrial complex, Mike Rogers is happy to dress in drag for them if it'll bring campaign money into his coffers. What else do we got here? Was there more things on my Twitter feed to look through? Oh, this is the one that's from 2023. Nothing on there. I think I've made my point, folks. I think I've made my point. To all of you who signed the petition today, thank you. We will probably do a couple of emails during the week, and then we'll get the signatures over to some folks on Trump's team who hopefully will faithfully deliver them. We'll see. I do have some campaign contacts that can forward them. I don't know anyone that knows Trump personally, but we'll do the best that we can given the circumstances. Let me go to my own Twitter, just in case there's things that people might have said that I might have wanted to comment on. Boy, see, the problem with tweeting is you do it, it's so easy to do, and pretty soon you got a very long feed to scroll through to find the things you're looking for. Let's see here. Oh, here's an interesting comment. Okay, I'll bring this one up on the screen. This is a comment from some person calling herself MAGA Queen. Says, all I can say is Trump must think Rogers has the best chance to turn the seat red versus the other candidates. Interesting theory. Problem with that is, remember, in 2020, Trump told voters to stay home in Georgia in the runoffs. Said the Georgia elections are stolen. Protest the stolen elections. Protest Raffensperger. Don't vote. And so, guess what? We have 2 Democrats in the U.S. Senate in Georgia. Yep, good that my headphones fell out again. So, if Trump willfully let us lose the Senate because he had a beef with Georgia election officials, now he cares so much about the Senate that he would endorse as someone that hates his guts. No, I don't think it's that at all. I think he just didn't know there was alternatives that were viable. I read the Kibbe tweet already. I think I read that already. I read this already. Yeah, Travis, the inspiration for today, Donald Trump needs to fire the person that told him to endorse Rogers. I don't think anyone did. Honestly, I think this was Trump's decision himself. I hope he realizes what a terrible mistake it was. Justin Amash himself says Mike Rogers might have the worst record of anyone I served with in Congress. He not only voted for the surveillance state, he was one of its chief architects. Obviously, self-serving coming from Justin Amash, but also true. Yeah, Rand Paul. If you go with Mike Rogers, maybe you should pick Liz Cheney for VP. I made that same joke in my email today, although mine was originally, there's the Roger Stone article. I'll come back to that one in a second. Yeah. You in for border czar in the next Trump administration is this guy. New endorsement from Donald Trump. Trump endorses Letitia James for Attorney General of New York. We're going to be considering her for a cabinet post. And this is my first one. Breaking. Leaked documents from the Trump campaign reveal who Donald Trump plans to endorse for his running mate. Trump's running mate in 2024 will be the COVID-19 coronavirus. This is how silly this is. This is just so bizarre. But also, I did make this comment. Since Rand Paul asked the question in his tweet here, again, what's next, John Bolton? But he asks, you have to ask yourself, who gives Trump this awful advice? Well, you know who else was chair of the House Intelligence Committee from Michigan? Pete Hoekstra, who was kind of on Trump Force One recently. Seen recently photographed with Mike Rogers. So, I mean, he is kind of a suspect. Just saying. Not that it really matters. It's Trump's own decision. I'm not going to bother with this right now because I think we've made our point here. I did get a strange email from Morris Owens, the disbarred Ohio attorney who's been meddling in the Michigan GOP affairs for Christina Caramo, who actually had a great oppo dump on Mike Rogers that he was kind enough to, he didn't send it to me, but someone forwarded it to me. Which, I hope all the other competitors in the U.S. Senate race actually choose to use, but we'll see. But hey, what can you say? A broken clock's right twice a day. A stopped clock is right twice a day. So there you go. All right. I think that's about it. I don't see any new chats to answer. I think I've made my point. I do hope that among the viable candidates, well, first of all, I would say among all the candidates who are not Mike Rogers, Peter Meyer, or Justin Amash, you guys all have a serious internal dialogue and decide, am I really viable? You are now competing with people who have millions of dollars to spend, one of whom has Washington swamp connections, the support of the NRSC, and the support of Donald Trump's endorsement. And if you're not prepared to spend at least $5 million of your own money in the primary, you do not have the money to compete in this race. And if you do, then you need to get together with the others who might have that kind of money and sort this out now, because it's not going to work if you guys all drop millions of dollars in the primary and only end up canceling each other's votes out, pulling with the same constituency and letting the NRSC decide who our nominee is, because I'll be damned if I'm voting in a choice between the FBI and the CIA in November. That's just the way that goes. So, all right. Talk to me. Pete says, never, Rogers. Fully agree. Thank you. Appreciate that. That will do it for us for tonight, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks, as always, for all you do for liberty. I'm sure we'll have more streams coming up soon, at the latest this coming Sunday. So thanks for tuning in. Until next time, peace.